Hi everyone, I hope you've had a great morning and learned lots of really good stuff. My name's Alexis Powell-Howard and I'm the Managing Director of Fortis Therapy and Training. I'm incredibly passionate about mental health and emotional well-being and thinking about the impact on of those things on us as individuals, but also within our families and our workplaces, our teams, all of those different things. Today, I'm going to be talking about happiness and thinking about, what it means to us. Should we be happy all of the time? Should we be striving for the next thing to create happiness? And also to think about how we can manage our happiness in everyday life. If we're thinking about what happiness means, there's an awful lot of different definitions out there, but they all have similar feelings within them. So happiness generally has a state of joy attached to it, also life satisfaction, contentment, and some fulfillment as well. So there's quite a lot there when we're thinking about how are we going to be happy? How are we going to be able to create happiness? Especially if we're not feeling some of those things, how do we create it? How do we move from a place of maybe not feeling happy to somewhere where we do feel happy? What I'd like you to think about is scaling your happiness. So think about 10 out of 10 being as happy as you've ever been. And so it might be at an event, it might be a moment, it might be something that you can kind of go, yeah, and exactly what that is. And then look down to the kind of 0 and the 1 out of that number, which is probably the lowest you've been, where you've been really unhappy. I want you to think about where you are on that scale. So this is really subjective. It doesn't mean that, this isn't exact science at all, but just consider where you are on your scale. So when you might pick a number, I want you to think about several things. Think about how you're feeling today, right now, in terms of happiness. Think about where you are physically, physiologically, your health and how you're doing within yourself. Consider your relationships. Think about that within your family, but also within your workplace, the role that you're in, all of these different aspects. And just consider picking one number to represent all of that. I didn't say it was easy. But say, for example, you're a 7 out of 10. If you're a 7 out of 10, how are you going to make yourself an 8 out of 10? What is it that you need to do in order to increase by one number? I think it's about incremental steps. It's never about saying, right, I'm a 7, I need to be a 10, and I'm not good enough because I'm not a 10 in terms of my happiness. This is about thinking around, okay, well, I'm a 7. Okay, I need to do something today to improve that number. You might be a 4 today, a 4 out of 10. What's happened? What's happened to you that's meant that you're feeling in that place? And how can you start to work your way up that scale? What's going to make you a 5? Just a 5 out of 10, 50% there. So considering our number and thinking about how we ebb and flow through that scale. So some days we're going to feel amazing. We're going to have a cracking day. We're going to, be with people we love and have a really great time. And we'll be a 10 out of 10. There's always going to be a downward slide from a 10 because, that we can't really sustain being a 10 out of 10 constantly because we're people and we're not robots and we move up and down that spectrum. But if you can keep in mind and track how you're doing with your happiness levels and where you are on that spectrum, then that gives you some control in what actions you need to take in order to improve that number. If you imagine the ebb and flow of the sea, it comes in sometimes and it's going out sometimes, that is how we operate. Sometimes we're going to be feeling great and sometimes we're not going to be feeling that good. But happiness is an individual thing. How I might feel when I'm feeling happy and how I might define it might be different to how you do. And what makes us happy will be different too. And that's absolutely fine. There is no exact science with this. So it's individual. That number will be individual and your feelings will be individual. There might also be some things that mean that you feel blocked from feeling happy. So if you're feeling low in mood or you're anxious or there's something coming up that you're quite fearful about, or you might have had traumatic experiences or things that happened, when you were younger or, as an adult, those things can sometimes get in the way of us feeling that happiness. And again, it doesn't matter if we're not getting to that 10 out of 10, but just thinking about how do I improve my number? How do I get myself up from there? And recognizing it's okay sometimes to feel a bit blocked. It's okay to sometimes struggle to get there. That's entirely natural and very human. But we need to know what it feels like, we need to know what it looks like, and we need to keep it in mind and as a focus of how we're going to create that happiness. The other thing to consider is if we're always striving for the next thing, we're never quite getting to the point of being happy. So if you're striving, if we take a promotion as an example, you strive to get a promotion. I'll be happy when I get that promotion. You get the promotion. Okay, now what? What does that mean? You know, if we're thinking about happiness in terms of our levels of confidence and our self-esteem, and that's all fine, but actually it's being able to enjoy the process, you know, the process of getting to where we want to be. So if I take my vegetable patch as an example, yes, there might be some great potatoes and sweet corn at the end of that growth, you know, growing those vegetables, but actually building the vegetable patch, being able to watch it grow, you know, planting things, watching them grow in the sunshine and seeing the effect the rain has, watching my puppy jump all over it and trash some of it. You know, that is the process and the system of something that brings me joy. It brings me happiness. So although other things might be going on around me, there is something there that encapsulates growth, it encapsulates a system that means I can be engaged with what's going on in the here and now. And the here and now is really important. You know, if we're always striving, how do we ever know we've got to that happy place? Because it potentially becomes something that's materialistic. New job, new home, new car, whatever. You know, what's important to you in terms of your happiness, and how are you keeping that in mind, really? Because when we're looking at contentment, contentment doesn't have to be complicated. You know, sometimes sitting with with a really good cup of coffee in a really nice sunny window, watching people go past, people watching is my hobby, and you know, really being able to be grounded in that moment can create happiness. It's really simple. It's contentment. If we are constantly striving and we never quite get to contentment, then we're missing a trick. The process of it, the system of it, being able to recognize when we have felt content, you know, look back over time and think, yeah, I was really content then. Was it on your own? Were you with someone? What were your circumstances? And how can you replicate those feelings in different places and at different times? Because it's really important. It's important to feel grounded and to feel connected. I'm just going to show you some masks. So sometimes our conditioning around happiness is can be really conflicting with actually allowing ourselves to be happy. Sometimes when I'm working with clients who might struggle to be happy, we will work on actually giving them permission to be able to be happy. You know, actually take some time out. I'm giving you permission to take some time out. You need it and you're worth it. And those are the things that sometimes we lose touch with. But we have a way of presenting to the world. So you can see on this one, I've used this one because it's a clown face. So often we can look happy and appear to be happy, but really on the inside, there's a sadness, or there might be an unhappiness. So how we might present, how we might come across to people, but also how other people around us might come across. They might be outwardly really happy. Got another one here. This is a really creative one with a crochet. So you can see outwardly, you know, flowers and quite vibrant and colourful, but on the inside, some kind of chaotic creativity going on in there about what's going on in someone's mind. And we sometimes need strategies and ways of managing those things so that we can actually untangle some of that and be really happy. So, you know, think about your conditioning around happiness. Think about the rules you've got around it. And how do you manage to be in the here and now? Being able to be in the here and now is really crucial. You know, being able to hear what's around us, be able to take joy out of something in any given situation. So, you know, you might be watching someone do something brilliantly that you admire. You might hear children playing or, you know, chattering away. You might listen to music that really lifts your mood. It brings you into the here and now rather than the there and then or the future stuff that you might be worrying about and thinking about. There's a really good grounding exercise, which I'm just going to share with you, which is great if you're feeling anxious, but actually it's just a good grounding exercise for, you know, being in the moment. And it's all based around your senses. So thinking about, you know, looking around you, 5 things that you can see around you. and be able to identify what they are. 4 things that you can touch around you. You might be sitting down, you might be already touching the chair or the table, but also what else is around you that you can touch. The 3 things that you can hear, and often when you really acutely listen, you can hear things that you weren't hearing before. 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So if you use that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sensory grounding technique, that will bring you back down to earth in exactly where you are. The other things to consider are things like breathing and mindfulness, which we know from the research makes a big difference to how we function, and being able to create that space in our own minds, bring our breathing rate down. So some great breathing techniques, 7-11, so breathe in for 7 and out for 11. The longer purposeful out breath triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, which just brings down all of those levels, your adrenaline levels, your cortisol, gets some oxygen into those muscles and into your mind, brings everything back down to earth. There's also some great apps as well that you can access, things like Headspace and Calm, things that actually enable you to create space for you to be able to be grounded in the here and now and to be able to experience joy. Now, one of the things that's really connected to that is gratitude. Being grateful is a huge help to being able to experience happiness, because it means that we become joyful about the things that we have around us and the things that we're grateful for. So that might be relationships, it might be health, it might be something we really love to do that we get to do. It might be being able to, I don't know, afford to book tickets for something that you love, being able to be grateful, because what happens is that when we're up against it, when we're struggling, our minds will tend to focus on what we have to get through. And that might be quite negative things. It might be a struggle that we're trying to overcome. It might be something that creates fear or anxiety. And really, that's the bit that we need to consider, that if we can be grateful and show that gratitude and be able to connect with that, it changes the narrative of what we feel we're trying to overcome. The other thing to consider is reciprocity. So we know that helping others helps our well-being. It's a good feeling when we help someone else and we see the joy in their face, or we know that we've made a difference to them, or we've really helped them out. It creates good feelings for us as well. And you never know, it might be reciprocated and someone might do something for you too. So there is always that as a benefit. There's a great series called Afterlife that Ricky Gervais has written and starred in. I'm sure many of you have seen it, but there's some really good quotes in there about happiness. Happiness is amazing. It's so amazing. It doesn't matter if it's yours or not. And good people do things for other people. And I think those 2 quotes, sometimes we can gain happiness from other people. Smiling is infectious. Laughing is infectious. Being able to do that for someone else means that there is a payment back to us, and that is something that can be really positive. So if we're thinking about some kind of main summary points before I finish, recognize what happiness means to you. What does contentment mean? How do you feel happy? And when was the last time you felt happy? When was the last time you had a really good belly laugh? Really to the point of not being able to, function properly because you're laughing so much. When was the last time that happened? And if it's been a while, then who do you need to spend time with? How do you need to put things in your diary to be able to look forward to something where you're going to have that opportunity to have a really good laugh? Think about your messages about happiness. What's your conditioning? Are you able to give yourself permission to be able to create space for happiness, create space for contentment, for gratitude, for joy? Or is it something that you have to earn, that you have to strive for? And if you strive for it, do you get that feeling? Because if you don't, can you enjoy the process of getting to the goal, whatever that goal might be? And happiness brings people together. If you are surrounded by people, if you're in a family, or if you're in a relationship, or you work within a team, having a bit of fun and having some opportunity for happiness is really important. We know it's helpful for our well-being. And often when we're thinking about looking after ourselves and thinking about the 5 ways of well-being and all the things that are out there, our self-care, all incredibly important, we sometimes forget that happiness is important too, and that we need to create space for it. Sometimes we need to work at it, and recognize that we're not always going to be happy, but sometimes we can put some things in to get ourselves up that scale and to create that happiness. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. If anybody wants to link in with me, just find me on LinkedIn at Alexis Powell-Howard, and I'd love to chat to you. Thank you.